Okay, you may begin.
Okay. Good morning, everybody. My name is Carmen Gonzalez, and I'm the co-chair of the Supporting Education Group. We had a fantastic group. We had everybody from early childhood through higher ed, so we covered the whole gamut. Everybody was very professional, knowledgeable, and I think at this time I'm going to go ahead and introduce everybody that's here. And I don't know if I'll go down the line this way, but if I say your name, just raise your hand, okay? So we have Dr. Garcia, who is the superintendent of Santa Fe Public Schools, was the co-chair, fabulous co-chair. We had Ellen Biederman. She's an education specialist. Julia Bergen, State Director of Communities and Schools. Dave Call was with the Lano Foundation. Ivan Cornejo with Communities and Schools. Edward Tabet Cubero with New Mexico Early Childhood Development Partnership. Dr. Catherine Courtney with the Santa Fe Community Foundation and Opportunity Santa Fe and a bunch of other things. Jeff Gephardt with Santa Fe Public Schools. Tony Gerlitz, he was the founder of Monte del Sol Charter School. Dr. Valerie Grimley with Santa Fe Indian School. Maria Lucero with PMS. Dr. Jeannie Oakes with Ford Foundation Education Program. And Dr. Jennifer Salee, Santa Fe Community College Early Childhood Center of Excellence. So we met a number of times, and we had a strategic planning session that Dr. Garcia led, and that's where we came up with our 4 areas of or objectives that we want to concentrate on. So I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Garcia.
Thank you so much, and I also want to thank you for doing the heavy lift as co-chair of this committee, and I want to thank the mayor for this great opportunity. So the 4 objectives that we worked towards in terms of providing our recommendations were in early childhood, workforce development, civic engagement, and restorative justice. On early childhood, what we sought to do was to improve access to high-quality early childhood education programs for all Santa Fe families. Under workforce development, we strove to establish present recommendations that would establish mentorships, internships, apprenticeships, and job training partnerships, a lot of ships here, between the city, business, schools, and higher education. And quite frankly, through all of these, I think partnership is the key to make all of this happen. The schools, whether it's higher ed or K-12, cannot do this work alone. It always requires partnership and connectivity. The third, under civic engagement, connecting youth to elected officials, public servants, and activists by partnering with the Santa Fe Public Schools, the Santa Fe Community College, and nonprofits for job shadowing mentorships and programs such as First Vote that promote service learning and political participation. As an aside, this connects with the work that the Santa Fe Public Schools is doing when we talked about the attributes of the graduate. Because what we heard from our community is that we want more than just the test score and the diploma, that we want to make sure that our students have these skills. So this dovetailed perfectly. And then lastly, restorative justice. Empower students and youth to resolve conflicts in and out of school using restorative justice processes. Include in this work a commitment to trauma-informed best practices across city and community agencies, while also focusing and educating the community on adverse childhood effects or experiences, also known as ACEs. This fit also with what we heard in the last panel about disenfranchised youth. And I think we all recognize that the best safety measure that we can incorporate is preventative in terms of behavioral and mental health. And with that, I believe I turn it over to Dr. Salee.
Good morning. So I'm going to talk a little bit about early childhood, and I have about 2 minutes. So I'm going to tee it up for us and tell you that James Heckman, he's a well-known economist, says if you invest in early childhood, your economy is going to improve. So that's one piece. And then when you look at Dr. Bruce Perry, he talks about the brain research and how important it is to invest early for children to set up their brains so that they can go to school ready for learning when they go to K-12. So we discussed in some of our recommendations, as Dr. Garcia touched on, workforce development. It is one of the most important things that we can do. I look at our fire zones right now in the area, and we're in a critical area where they've shut down the Santa Fe Forest. I would say early childhood and teaching in general is in a critical zone right now. It's in the red. We need teachers. So this needs to be, one of our recommendations is we need a champion and a city-wide presence for bringing up the workforce, boot camps, internships, mentorships, as Dr. Garcia said, and just an overall recruitment for our city. And one of the other options that we looked at was how can the city help align resources? So there's resources that are allocated out, and it's just align those resources that you have available to you and explore additional funding for the area. And one of the big things that I could recommend to the entire city, especially to our mayor, it would be a champion in the legislature for us. So a lot of times you'll see bills go forward, or you'll see proposals go forward, and just keep an eye on those and make sure that Santa Fe is part of that. And now I'm going to turn it over to Tony.
Thanks, Jennifer. So about 18 years ago, when we founded the Monte del Sol Charter School, we asked the question, what is the point of education? Why are we doing this? And of course, the natural answer, of course, if you listen to Washington, then the point of education is to raise test scores. And if you listen to employers and civic and cultural leaders in our community, they will say, well, that has nothing to do with the people that come to us for whatever they come to us for. But if the point is we want to have kids be contributors to the economic well-being of the communities and to themselves, given. But we also need young people to be contributors to the social, cultural, civic life of the communities in which they live and to improve those. That's not necessarily a given, although that's what we as progressive educators believe. So we began this mentorship program, and the mentorship program asked young people, well, what are you interested in? And you could be at the high end of the academic spectrum and say, I'm interested in physics or chemistry, or you could be at whatever end of the academic spectrum and said, I'm interested in cutting grass or auto mechanics or whatever it is. There is an adult in the community that shares that interest, that we can partner with that young person and show them what it takes to be successful in your passionate area. If you look around this room here, there's enormous talent in this room. There's enormous talent in Santa Fe. We have mentored, we have partnered young people with adults now for the past 18 years in Monte del Sol. I left that school 10 years ago, took the idea overseas to the international school where I worked previously, same concept, and brought it back to the Mandela International Magnet School, same concept. What I would say to the city is, if we want an emotionally healthy city, if we want to expose young people to see what their education is really for, and it's not to be either disengaged or to be bored, but to be engaged, to actually see the fruits of an educated workforce, to see that you got to show up on time, to see that if you can't make a meeting, you got to call, to see that you have the opportunity to identify a passionate area and go for it under the guidance of a professional. So what I would ask the city is to, when we find a young person who identifies an area of interest, have the city help us find a mentor. And that should be easy to do in this incredible city of Santa Fe. Perhaps the city could open up all of its agencies and say, Department of Transportation, take a mentor, be a protege. Recently, in fact, the mayor during his campaign under Mary Freitas agreed to mentor a youngster in politics. That youngster right now is much more interested in politics than ever before. So that's what I would ask for the mayor and the city. Let's see, Catherine, I believe you're next.
Thank you. Santa Fe is truly uniquely positioned to turn the curve on education right now and be an example for the rest of the state on how we can pull ourselves out of 49th for child outcomes. I believe that Santa Fe truly recognizes that education does not happen in a silo, as Dr. Garcia said. It is not up to the department, to Santa Fe Public Schools alone to fix education, and we recognize that. And we have strong existing collaborations that can help move that forward and move us forward as a community and have truly great outcomes for our youth and our families. We have strong existing partnerships between the public schools, the Santa Fe Community College, New Mexico Early Childhood Development Partnership, communities and schools, and tons of other nonprofits that are already working together to turn the curve for our youth. And we have a unique opportunity to even enhance those partnerships, focus on the items outlined here, and really move forward for our children and families. And I will turn it over to Julia.
So to try to just briefly summarize, with our new mayor and our strong and effective, wise superintendent of public schools, I think Santa Fe has a really significant opportunity in this moment to address issues that are both impacting our kids in school, but also within our community. Absolutely alignment with and partnership with existing institutional work and agency work is really critical. Mayor Weber, you don't have to start from scratch. There's a lot of really valuable work being done. I think one of the consistent threads through our work, from my perspective, was a return to really addressing the social emotional well-being of our community's children and young people, and really ensuring that we can become a trauma-informed city and really use best practices work that's being implemented in cities across the country within trauma-informed care and restorative justice that is reducing dropout, reducing the incidence of suspensions among kids, and is actually decreasing incarceration among young people. And I think we all know that if we can successfully keep more children in school and embrace who they are, where they are, see them as the unique amazing individuals that they are, embrace them, ensure that the city in which they live is safe and is a safe validating place for them as well as a safe place for them physically. I think that we could go a long way to seeing transformation among our youth in our community. And so one request I think we make through this work, Mayor Weber, is to really look to city agencies like the police department, fire department, other public agencies that also will really, really benefit from being educated and trained in trauma-informed practices. It's all well and good that our schools, staff and adults in schools have those practices and tools in their toolkits to support kids when they are acting out or demonstrating behavioral health challenges. But when they step outside of school, we want to be sure that when they maybe are making a mistake or a misjudgment and they're encountered by a police officer, that police officer has the right tools and language to de-escalate what's going on for a young person, meet them where they are, and help them make better choices going forward. And I think that we will see stronger overall educational outcomes when we really look at the whole child as a whole community.
Does anybody else want to add anything?
I'd rather leave some time for questions and perhaps dialogue.
So we're ready for questions.
Again, ask your questions, and Matt and Danila will pick them up.
Give Danila and Matt a chance to collect these. I thank this group for your coming to the table to work on this. This is an issue that cuts across the entire city. I think everybody who lives in Santa Fe knows that education is the place where we need to devote time, energy, resources, effort. On the campaign trail, I can tell you that at every single house party event that I attended, it was the first issue that came up. It was the place that people wanted to spend the most time, even though they know that directly the mayor and the city council are not directly responsible for the education program in the schools. They recognize that there's so many ways we touch the lives of young people that they want the school district and the city to collaborate along with the other institutions in the city to address education very directly and very significantly. So your work is critical to what we do going forward. I'm struck by a couple things. One is that if you look at the public safety group work, it also talks about restorative justice as a piece of its recommendation, and so I'd like you to address that in a little more depth and talk more specifically about what you think the city can and should do going forward around restorative justice as something that we embrace. And the second thing, Tony, if you can come back to the mentorship program. I was just at the U.S. Conference of Mayors gathering in Boston, and the mayor of Louisville, who's quite a remarkable man, has led a national effort to have cities become cities of compassion, which Santa Fe is, by the work of our city council. But I'm struck that in your recommendation, we have an opportunity to embrace the idea of being a city of mentors. Just the way Louisville has said they wanted to champion being a city of compassion. How could we go about becoming a city that mentorship is one of the things we're known for and we actually implement going forward? So two things, restorative justice and becoming a city of mentors.
Thank you, Mayor. I want to address the issue of trauma in our community a little bit. As we know, and as we're learning more and more, trauma is really one of the major root causes for why New Mexico continues to be so low in all of our rankings. And we're learning that there are real concrete ways that we can address that as a community, can and need to address that. And restorative justice is just one of those pieces. But we know that New Mexico is one of 5 states with the highest rates of ACEs. And we also know that our children are probably facing even more than we can measure. And so addressing that trauma is the best thing we can do to address educational outcomes. And I'll let Julia talk about restorative justice.
So I will talk about restorative justice through the lens of work that some of the communities and school staff have been doing in one of our middle schools. And our one staff person, Mary Louise Romero, some of you may know Mary Louise, had worked in the juvenile justice world for a long time and developed a curriculum that really provided an opportunity for kids who had gotten into trouble and were on the path to be incarcerated to find a more constructive way to both learn from the experience and to be mediated through and facilitated through a more positive outcome that didn't necessarily have to lead to incarceration. So the underlying intent of restorative justice really is to find healing through mediation and not always take an immediate punitive path that could lead to incarceration. We don't want our kids in jails. So restorative justice is a really powerful approach to helping young people find alternative ways to deal with the trauma that they're living with on a daily basis and then get on a more positive path in their lives. I'm actually really encouraged, Mr. Mayor, to know that your Public Safety Committee is also looking at restorative justice and trauma-informed care practices. That means that as a community, we're actually in alignment in our thinking about what our young people need, and that I think merits more conversation perhaps between these two committees.
And briefly, as we work, our principals work with the police department, we want to make sure that we're implementing these strategies and not strengthening that school to prison pipeline.
I'm happy to talk about mentorship, but I would say on restorative justice as well that as a former school founder and principal, when we use restorative justice with kids, suspension rates dropped, if not disappeared. The compassion in the victim and the compassion in the perpetrator increased tremendously. Emotional intelligence was high on the list when that practice is implemented. So full steam ahead on that. The mentorship program that we began 18 years ago has actually grown. We then approached the city under previous administration to show and demonstrated our success in keeping kids engaged in various aspects of city life under the guidance of adults. The city contributed about $30,000 a number of years ago, and Inspire Santa Fe was created. Inspire Santa Fe is that organization that's headed by Todd Lopez, myself, and others that now take mentorship to a number of schools. And we have now about 6 schools that are engaged in the mentorship program along the models that we created years ago. Thanks to Dr. Garcia, that's going to expand into 2 additional schools this year, Santa Fe High and Capitol High. We'll be working with Inspire Santa Fe. We're not exactly sure how we're going to pay for it. Much of the work was volunteer. But it's an extraordinary way to demonstrate to kids what the value of being engaged in your education, in your community and cultural life is. So if we wanted to be a city of mentors and a city of compassion, it is very low cost. This is not a heavy duty budget. We were part of the collaborative Santa Fe that Catherine oversaw this year. She can talk to what it cost in Inspire Santa Fe. We had about 80 kids who presented at our mentorship festival in extraordinary projects. Again, on the high end of things, I got a couple of stories that are just so rich. One, a good student who was interested in architecture. We found an architect in town, and from September until April, they met every 2-3 weeks, very flexible whenever it worked. That youngster did a little makeup for the Mandela International School, so saying we need to improve that school and the design of that school, and here's what I'm going to do. And she did that. And that's on the high end of the academic spectrum. On the other end, a youngster said, I don't know what I want to do. I'm interested in music. I like DJing. And we found a DJ from Laguna Pueblo who had made his living being a DJ. And thanks to his compassion, he said, I want to give back to this community. He was the mentor for this youngster, who was not a very good academic student. And at the end, and he was at the festival, he showed his DJing. At the end, he said, what did you learn about this mentorship? He said, man, I got to be disciplined. What do we want in our community but that kind of compassion? So the more that we can expand those opportunities, and Alan, I think that the city just has a tremendous opportunity. It's low cost. We tell everyone, you know, Inspire Santa Fe is an organization. We have all the protocols. We have all the structures. We just need the adults to be the mentors to the kids, and we'll take care of the rest.
It's not about mentorships, but at Santa Fe Community College, they're starting an internship program that's being funded partially by Lano Foundation, not the labs, and Santa Fe Community College Foundation. So they're going to pick certain areas that they're going to look for internships. So I think in some way this could all work together too. So we're ready for questions. Yeah.
CONALMA published a report on grandparents raising grandchildren. Extended family members are increasingly assuming primary care of their grandchildren because parents are unavailable or unwilling to be involved. How is this trend affecting our children's ability to succeed in school, and what do you see as a solution?
We're going to make Edward talk.
Thanks. Well, yeah, I appreciate CONALMA's report, and they're such a phenomenal resource in our community. You know, I think we all across the city have the good intention of equity for our families, but I don't think our reality matches our values in our community. And one example, I think, is that you know, you have families that are struggling with, you know, parents that may be facing a myriad issues, and grandparents stepping in to fill particular roles in particular parts of our community. And you have other folks in our community, and to no fault of their own, that can buy a head start for their children by putting them in particular types of programs. And I think that, you know, disparate opportunities for our children result in disparate outcomes that we see. And so we ask about, you know, economic drivers and the workforce and, you know, all of those sorts of things in our community. And I think we need to go down into, you know, the pre-K level and do an analysis and say, okay, what are the disparate opportunities and how do we provide equitable opportunities for all children? And one of those is we do have families that can afford high quality early childhood education, pre-K, and so on. And we have families that cannot, and then we scratch our heads wondering why the outcomes are so different. And so I think that bringing equity in the early childhood space, providing support to grandparents and other families that are struggling to find access to those types of programs that aren't affordable to everybody would be helpful. And Jennifer, I'll pass it to you for the home visiting conversation.
I will say one resource we have that's a great resource in our community, and it is provided by United Way, is home visiting. So it doesn't matter if a family is a first-time parent or is a parent that has stepped in for that they're members of their family for various reasons, a grandparent. Home visiting is a way that helps parents learn how to work with their children, whether it's biting or sleep or behaviors or eating. There's a whole host of reasons that home visiting can step in. And it's one of those wonderful tools that we do have access, and it needs to be expanded.
I just wanted to say one thing about the digital divide in education. I teach at the community college to first-time students who want to go into early childhood. And although there's a lot of online classes at the community college and everybody thinks that's the way to go for workforce development, my students did not have internet at home, nor did they have computers at home, nor did they have access. So the only thing they had was their phone. And so I think that sometimes we make the assumption of what people have that may not, that we think we're providing opportunities for them, but in fact, we're not, because they don't have the access to the same things that other people have.
And just one more thing about the grandparents raising children. Again, trauma. That's why they end up in that situation.
Okay. This one I think is for Tony specifically. You have a fan out there, Tony. How can we inspire young people to believe that building green homes and sustainable communities is a cool, worthwhile pursuit?
Yeah, I'm going to pass this over to Dr.
We're actually doing that at ECO, our early college opportunity school, where we've combined the building of tiny houses. You can learn everything about construction and building a small home, but they're also adding the greenhouse and the sustainability piece. So we have that going right now, and that we have students who are attracted to that career path and are choosing to go to ECO. And we want to continue to build on that. So whoever wrote that question, come see me, because I'd love to partner with you. Or maybe we already are.
And I'll let you know that Santa Fe Community College also has a green building program, biofuels, all kinds of new energy type programs.
One more question. How can we work with local pediatricians to ensure they are giving ACE questionnaires and referring families to occupational speech therapy?
So we're going to tag team on this one. So I'll say one of the best things that we can do is we have developmental screenings, and so just ensuring that all students go through those developmental screenings. Some of the easiest ones are ASQ, ASQ-SE, and we have many people in the field, and it should be just part of the pediatrician portfolio. When the child goes in, the parent fills it out, and then it's really easy to see if they need a referral for more services.
Yeah, I think a couple of things on that front. When children participate in pre-K programs, the ASQ is administered and those development screenings are taken care of. And then in home visiting, the United Way Santa Fe County's home visiting program actually offers 48 visits with young families. If you can imagine just the intensity of that type of program, as a parent of 4 daughters, I'm still looking for the notebook, the handbook to teach me how to raise, my kids, especially now in their teen years. But 48 visits, is nothing to balk at, to be able to ensure that those pediatrician visits, those screenings, all of those things are taken care of. And so there's a real need to expand home visiting in our state.
I also think it's really important. When I was at the Children's Museum, we had programs at La Familia, and we had programs that were so simple because they were also in the waiting rooms. It's something the city could help to help parents understand what their kids were doing and help parents really see that instead of kind of being always just coming from top down, really kind of working with parents when they're like waiting for the pediatrician's visit and giving them kind of that kind of information. I think the pediatricians is a key place, or any health agency where parents are, is key to kind of provide that kind of information.
By the way, if there are any adults out there who want to be a mentor, please come see me.
There's a New Mexico Association of Pediatricians, I believe that's what it's called, something like that, and they issued a report and they emphasize the importance of ACEs and screening for ACEs. I don't think it would be a hard sell to that group to convince them to do that. The important thing is making sure there's a network of support to which they can refer kids that need it.
Okay, so I think that's it for us.
Okay.
We-
Thank you all very much for your presentation, and good work. Good work.
But thank you.
Just a quick word or two. Quick word or two. I was struck in the response on the green building that once again we discovered there are great things going on that not everybody knows about. And one of your recommendations was the Becoming Brilliant in Santa Fe recommendation, learning from Albuquerque in the Partnership for Community Action, where there is an app on which families report the community programs they're already participating in. What we just saw in action was there's a lot of things that people are participating in that need to be brought together in a place where everyone can have access to those resources. Number one. Number two, thank you for a tremendous piece of work and for bringing all of your wisdom and experience to bear on this critical issue. I think the lesson or the language that we should all remember from this working group is disparate opportunities lead to disparate outcomes. And that speaks to equity, that speaks to investment in our kids, speaks to data so we know exactly where we are, and to pulling together as a community to make this a shared priority. So thank you for your work. Appreciate it.